My soon-to-be ex-wife and I, both 26, have a 5-year-old son and a 10-month-old daughter. I work as a manager at an IT company, while she's a receptionist at a hospital, although she's been on maternity leave recently. I'm outgoing, while she's more introverted, preferring to spend time with close family and childhood friends. On July 1st, 2023, an ex-employee from my workplace, age 23, came to our house to return important documents I had left at his place. My wife, not recognizing him, let him in and offered him coffee while he waited for me. Meanwhile, I was at my parents' house 5 miles away. According to the ex-employee, here's what happened next, as he recounted over the phone 2 days ago. Employee: do you know about me and your wife? Me: what do you mean? Explain. Employee: remember last month when I dropped off documents and we ended up talking? Well, we bonded over literature, and things escalated. Your wife was friendly, and, well, we ended up being intimate upstairs while your son was around. I know it was wrong, but I wanted to be upfront about it. Me: are you serious? This sounds like troublemaking. Employee: no, I resigned because I didn't want a scandal. Your wife is married, not me. I didn't force her, but I felt you should know. Me: I'll talk to her about this. If it's true, there will be consequences. Employee: okay, I'll leave it to you. I'm sorry for any trouble caused. After this conversation, I intended to confront my wife and address the situation accordingly. I was overwhelmed with a mix of anger and pain. This employee had only been with us since May, and I'm certain my wife didn't even know him before that day. I confronted her, and although she initially denied it, she eventually admitted to what happened, especially after learning that the employee had quit. She expressed deep remorse and claimed she didn't know what came over her. When I mentioned that our son had witnessed the incident, she broke down in tears. I decided to stay with my parents for a few days while I figure out what to do. Both my parents and her family have been supportive of me and condemn her actions. I've been in touch with my son and baby daughter via FaceTime, reassuring them that I'll be with them soon. I've concluded that there's no salvaging our relationship, and I'm set on getting a divorce. However, the main concerns now are custody arrangements and financial matters. I'm determined not to end up like many men who lose everything in a divorce caused by their wives' actions and are left with limited access to their children. Story 2. Laura reminisced about their pearl wedding anniversary, a joyous occasion filled with family and friends who had been part of their journey since their wedding day 3 decades ago. Carl, her husband, exuded charm and strength, with a touch of gray at his temples adding to his allure. Laura, at 52, still felt vibrant and elegant, donning a stunning evening dress for the celebration. Amidst the festivities, Carl invited Laura to dance, drawing attention from the guests, reminiscent of their wedding night. His expression held a hint of wistfulness as he thanked her for 30 years of marriage, to which Laura responded with heartfelt appreciation for his role as the perfect husband. However, Carl's subsequent comment about Laura's boss, Charles Davenport, cast a shadow over the evening. Laura was taken aback by the accusation of an affair, feeling a wave of nausea and tears threatening to surface. Despite her distress, she maintained composure, fearing public scrutiny. Carl confronted her about the affair, prompting a candid conversation about her relationship with Charles. Laura admitted to their meetings, emphasizing that it wasn't about wild passion but rather companionship and support during a difficult time for Charles. Carl, however, remained skeptical, questioning the nature of her feelings and their impact on their marriage. As they continued to dance, Laura grappled with conflicting emotions, torn between her feelings for Charles and her love for Colonel. The evening, once filled with joyous celebration, now carried an undercurrent of tension and uncertainty, mirroring the complexities of their marriage. Laura, you knew the consequences. Regardless of whether I found out, it's a betrayal of us. Now, this is usually the part where you declare your undying love for me, claim it was all a mistake, and promise never to see him again. I'm not sure how he'd react if I left him. He was really depressed before. Just unhappy or clinically depressed. Don't be cruel, he wasn't well. I feared he might take drastic measures. The song ended, and we approached Charles. Carl eyed his outstretched hand with disdain, leaving it hanging. I'd like you to explain your relationship with my wife and why you had the audacity to show up at our anniversary party, Carl demanded. Charles stuttered, I don't know what you're talking. He knows, Charles. There's no point denying it, I interjected. Charles composed himself. The truth is, I love Laura. I'm sorry it affects you, but I can't apologize for my feelings. She saved me. If it weren't for her kindness, I'm not sure I'd still be here. Using your deceased wife as an excuse to pursue a married woman is despicable, Carl seethed. Charles retorted, I didn't take her, we bonded through grief. I was a wreck. What? You lost your wife, so you thought you'd take mine? Carl snapped. He hasn't taken me. I'm still here, still your wife, I interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. Carl turned to me, we'll keep up appearances for another 30 minutes, then we're leaving. I don't want the kids exposed to this travesty after all the effort they put into tonight. I nodded, suppressing sobs as my heart broke for him. Tonight's celebration of marriage seems like an appropriate end, Carl muttered bitterly. Don't be ridiculous. We're not ending things over this, we can work through it, I protested, walking away hastily to compose myself in the restroom. I wasn't seeking an affair, I was happily married to a wonderful man, Colonel. My boss, Charles, had always flirted with me, and I found myself enjoying the attention, although it never went beyond that. Everything changed when his wife, Lucy, passed away. He was devastated, and it was heartbreaking to see him so broken. I, along with others, tried to cheer him up, which led to us spending lunches together. It was during our business trips that we grew closer. I knew being there for him was helping him through his grief, and it felt natural spending time together. The physical aspect was secondary. I considered telling Carl, but I knew he wouldn't understand. It could potentially hurt his pride and ego, things not to be taken lightly. I convinced myself that I could keep it a secret and spare him any pain. Once Charles recovered, he expressed his gratitude to me in various ways. He made me feel appreciated and valued. I told myself we needed to stop, but Charles always found a way to make me feel good again. Charles was different from Carl. He was more sophisticated and confident, traits I admired. He was the opposite of my calm and thoughtful husband. My worst fear was Carl finding out. I had prepared excuses in case, but deep down, I believed Carl would forgive me. He loved me deeply, and I couldn't imagine us being apart, no matter what. When Carl confronted me on our anniversary, I hesitated and couldn't maintain eye contact. Denials and anger seemed pointless. The next day, I sat down with Colonel. He looked drained as he accused me of not caring. That's not true, I love you, I care so much about you, I protested. And him. Don't forget you care about him, can't even give the fucker up for me, Carl retorted. I tried to explain about Charles's depression, our friendship, and the growing feelings. But Carl questioned the purpose of the upcoming business trip, and my explanation sounded feeble. So it sounds like this is all very much planned, and the business trip is just another cover for your affair, Carl concluded. I attempted to make him understand that not everything was bad, that this was just a small part of our lives. Until you found out, how would you have described our marriage? I asked. Happy, content, the perfect marriage everyone thinks we have, Carl replied bitterly. That's great, I feel the same way. I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I've always tried to be the best possible wife to you, and we have a perfect life together, I said, trying to salvage the situation. Yeah, apart from you having an affair and basing our perfect marriage on lies, Carl snapped. It doesn't have to affect our happiness, we've been good, especially recently. I feel like I've become a better person in some ways, more considerate of others, I said. Yeah, you do seem pretty pleased with yourself, Carl replied. I winced at his comment. Damn it, Carl, the smart remarks aren't helping. How did you find out anyway? So we're on the brink of divorce, and your only concern is how I found out? Is that just so you can cover your tracks better next time? You've said sorry, but you haven't suggested that you'll stop seeing him, Carl retorted. It's not that simple. I'm not sure if he would be okay without me. I think he would slip into another depression, I explained. Wow, I guess that lets me know where I stand. Your priority is his welfare. What happens when I get depressed because I have a cheating wife? Do I get you back then? Carl's anger scared and saddened me. I want you to leave, he demanded. It's my house as much. Leave now. Just get the hell out, Laura, before I do something I regret. I decided to drive to my best friend's house, Wendy. As I arrived, I realized she must have been the one who told Colonel I confronted her, feeling betrayed. Carl has thrown me out, and the only way he could have found out is if you told him, I accused her. I haven't said a word, Laura, she replied firmly. You know what, Laura, screw you. I've been avoiding Carl for 3 months to keep your secret. You've been acting like a love-struck teenager, and the only person I've betrayed is him. Now get out of my house. Getting thrown out was becoming a habit. I ended up going to my mom's house and making up a story about a small argument to deflect her questions. Later, Wendy realized she had to do something important. She went to Carl and Laura's house to apologize. Please tell me you're not here to plead her case, Carl said when he answered the door. No, I'm here to plead mine and apologize, Wendy admitted. She explained everything to Carl, apologizing for not speaking up sooner. Carl considered her words carefully. I can see how she put you in an awkward situation. Damned if you do and damned if you don't, Carl said thoughtfully. Why do you think she did it, Wendy? He asked. I think she thought she was saving him, starting as a friendship but blurring into more, Wendy replied. Are you sure throwing her out is a good move? Doesn't that give him more opportunity? Carl nodded. Talking wasn't working. She's lost in a romantic love story. I thought throwing her out might shock her into some realization. I have no idea if she wants me or him. She might not realize it now, Carl, but it's you she needs. You've always been her strength and support, Wendy assured him. Laura, I knew it was risky, but I needed guidance. Charles was the smartest person I knew, and I called him for help. He was pleased to hear from me and suggested we meet. As usual, we agreed to meet outside of work at a fancy restaurant, and I dressed up for the occasion. I wanted to salvage my marriage with Carl, but also needed to keep Charles interested in case things didn't work out. If Carl wouldn't take me back, then Charles could be my backup plan. After all, he had professed his love for me multiple times. We had just been seated when Carl walked in with Wendy. I was furious. I stormed up to them as they were sitting down. What are you doing with my husband? I demanded. I imagine the same as you are with Charles. I did tell you numerous times that I thought Carl was a great catch. If you're foolish enough to throw that away. Wendy retorted. I turned to Carl. You can't do this, we're married. A fact you seem more than willing to ignore, he replied, looking across at Charles. It's just dinner with a friend, nothing more, I insisted. Really? Nice outfit, by the way. Unless I'm mistaken, those are your seamed stockings and come fuck me heels. I guess tonight is his lucky night, or should I say another lucky night, Carl said loud enough for everyone to hear. My face flushed with embarrassment. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. It was supposed to be a romantic evening, not a public confrontation where my husband announced to everyone that I was dressed for seduction. Wendy looked down at my legs, seeing black stockings, a bit obvious and tardy. Maybe you should try a sexy nurse's uniform. After all, you're supposedly looking after his health. Wendy continued, turning to Carl with a smile. Personally, I find nude hold-ups far more subtle. I watched as Carl raised his eyebrows at her. She was flirting with him right in front of me. That woman told you everything to split us up. I accused. She did no such thing. She tried to be your friend at my expense. I hadn't seen her until you accused her the other day. After that, she came over and apologized. She explained that you were her oldest friend and that she had repeatedly tried to convince you to see some sense. I've got to say, her apology was more convincing than yours, Carl responded. I was speechless. It was so frustrating. Go back to your boyfriend, Laura. We're done, Carl declared. I burst into tears and rushed out of the restaurant. I was losing him, and even if we managed to stay married, I could see that things would never be the same. I went from feeling loved and cherished to someone he was struggling to tolerate. I couldn't understand how they knew we would be at the restaurant. It couldn't have been a coincidence, and they were clearly prepared for seeing me with Charles. Charles offered to help, suggesting that we meet with Carl together to explain and smooth things over. It sounded unlikely, but I was desperate enough to try anything. Carl was always quicker than me in discussions or arguments, but I knew Charles could hold his own. Carl was shocked when I walked back into our old home with Charles. He stood up, looking like he might attack Charles. "You've got to be kidding me," Carl exclaimed. "This concerns all of us, and Charles is here to help explain things properly," I said. To my surprise, Carl calmly sat back down. "Well, it's nice to know there are 3 of us in this relationship. I can't wait to hear this." Ignoring his sarcasm, I began, "Firstly, I want to apologize to you. It was never my intention to develop a relationship with Charles, and I never meant to hurt you. I know this is hard to believe, but I truly do love you." Charles spoke up, "I want to apologize as well. If I had been in my right mind, I never would have crossed that line. I was unwell. I can honestly say that without Laura, I might not be here today. She saved me." "You seem fine now. Is she still saving you, or is it just physical now? You don't get to claim my wife just because you were ill." "It's still cheating and a complete betrayal," Carl retorted, fixing me with his steely blue gaze. "You chose him over me." "I never intended to, but I couldn't abandon a friend in need," I explained. "You could have been a friend without being physically involved," Carl shot back. Ignoring his crude remark, I began the speech I had rehearsed with Charles. "This wasn't planned. We simply grew close in difficult circumstances, and we have developed feelings for each other. I am sorry for hurting you. You don't deserve any of this. As I see it, we have a few options." "Please, enlighten me," Carl said sarcastically. "Well, you could divorce me. It's the last thing I want, but I won't fight it if that's what you want. The kids are adults now, but they still need both of us. I'd split the assets any way you wanted and trust you to be fair. But that option would destroy all the plans we have for our life together. I still want to share all of those things with you, if you'll let me." "And if we divorce, you move in with him?" Carl questioned. "We haven't discussed that, but yes, I think that would be inevitable if you chose to leave me. You're not the abandoned one here. I haven't abandoned you, you threw me out. The second option is I could stop seeing Charles, and you forgive me somehow. I'm not sure that's possible. It would eat away at you, and you wouldn't trust me. I couldn't abandon someone I have feelings for in his time of need. I'd never forgive myself." Carl chuckled. "Time of need? He looks like the cat that got the cream. Can't you see he's enjoying this?" "I'm trying to be honest here," I continued. "Or we continue as we are. You said you were happy, and I want to keep making you happy. My relationship with Charles doesn't have to affect you. We can remain respectful to each other." Carl burst into laughter. "Respectful? You have no clue." Undeterred, I pressed on. "In return, I would accept you being with someone else, even if it's Wendy. I think you're a one-woman man, but I'd understand if you wanted to explore other options. I don't want anything beyond you and Charles. We could be honest, I'd be the best wife possible to both of you. No running around, no secrets. We'd work on building trust between the 3 of us, and that's the option I'd prefer." Carl stared at me intensely. "I prefer option 1. Let's divorce." His matter-of-fact tone sent a jolt through me. The reality of what I could be losing hit me hard. I had agreed to this ultimatum, believing I had Charles as a fallback plan, but now I wasn't so sure. "One more thing, did he come up with this bullshit?" Carl asked, glaring at Charles and me. I couldn't meet his gaze, and Charles looked equally uncomfortable. "Laura, you're really taking some terrible advice. It's like someone's advising actions to ensure we break up." "You couldn't have said anything more antagonistic if you tried," Carl exclaimed. Charles interjected, "This is a reasonable proposition given the circumstances." "Get lost, Charles. You know divorce is my only choice, just as you planned. Tell me, Laura, who else knew about your affair besides you and Wendy?" Carl inquired. No one else, only Charles, Laura replied. Exactly. Maybe he bragged to a friend or friends about banging the hot MILF at work. That friend mentions it to someone else, and suddenly lots of people know, including someone who knows me. Someone could ensure the message got back to me, Carl speculated, looking at Charles. That's ridiculous. I knew nothing about it, Charles denied. It's also funny how Wendy found out about your little restaurant liaison so quickly, through a friend. Quite convenient. We went there to shock some sense into you, even though you had run straight to your lover. It took me a while to realize he was happy at us being there, Carl remarked. Laura teared up. He's in love with me, he would never hurt me like that. The group of four departed for a week-long trip to Corfu, comprising my wife Kirsty and her three lifelong friends from school, Laura, Jane, and Shona. They were inseparable and made it a tradition to go on a couple of short breaks together each year. I didn't mind, as it allowed me to enjoy a couple of golfing weekends in return. While a full week was unusual, they found a last-minute bargain that was cheaper than their usual weekend getaways. With hastily arranged time off, they flew out on Monday and were scheduled to return the following Sunday. That left me, Mark, in charge of our 15-year-old son Jake and 8-year-old Chloe. It's not that I couldn't cook, but Kirsty left pre-prepared meals for the week just in case I struggled in the kitchen. The week started off smoothly with help from both sets of grandparents. I managed work alongside the school runs, sports activities, and dance clubs. I made a decent effort at handling household chores, partly thanks to Kirsty's detailed instructions for the washing machine, left in the form of post-it notes. Kirsty called a few times, mainly to ensure I hadn't caused any mishaps, but also to remind the kids of her love and how much she missed us all. We survived the week, and I waited for the girls at the airport alongside John and Tony, the husbands of Shona and Jane, respectively. Laura remained single. The kids were absorbed in their gadgets at home, and I trusted Jake to look after Chloe for short periods. As Shona and Jane emerged through arrivals looking tired, followed by Laura, I noticed Kirsty was absent. The other girls' greetings seemed subdued, and I continued scanning the crowd for her. Laura mentioned an email from Kirsty that I hadn't received. Confused, I asked if she was okay, fearing she might be ill or injured. They assured me she was fine but had decided to extend her stay for a couple of days with some friends. My barrage of questions yielded vague responses, leaving me feeling concerned and embarrassed. Upon returning home, I immediately checked the computer, finding Kirsty's email that had arrived just after I left for the airport. It echoed what Laura had said, mentioning a spontaneous sailing trip with friends and an extended stay. However, it left me puzzled as to why she hadn't called to inform me, especially considering she hadn't called in the past couple of days. The mention of friends left me perplexed as I couldn't think of anyone she'd be sailing with. I tried calling her mobile, but it went to voicemail. Leaving a terse message, I grew increasingly uneasy. Despite repeated attempts, there was no response. I then started calling her three friends, hoping they could provide more information. The lack of anger surprised Laura. "It's too late, Laura. You wanted somebody else, I wasn't enough for you," Carl stated firmly. "It was never that. I was just trying to help a friend," Laura insisted. "Come off it. You must know you're lying to yourself to ease your conscience. You liked what he was offering, our life together wasn't enough. You're going to struggle to come to terms with this, but it's pretty simple. You're a lying cheat, nothing more than that. I think you should go," Carl asserted. "Please don't make me leave," Laura begged. "You go or I do. In the circumstances, it should be you, don't you think?" Carl concluded. 6 months later, they were divorced, a simple process that left a mess in Laura's life. They handled it all online, without lawyers, counselors, or courts. Laura moved out, back to her mom's house, a step back in time. Memories flooded back of living there and being excited about dating Colonel. The memory of her wedding morning and getting ready at her mom's for the best day of her life stung. In the end, Laura had to confess to friends and the kids. They started to hint that it must have been Carl's fault. After all, he was an attractive guy and probably played around. Neither Laura's parents nor children could believe it at first. It wasn't until she broke down completely that they realized the truth of her betrayal. They didn't disown her, but things were never the same again. Charles tried to contact Laura on numerous occasions, but she never responded. He was an absolute snake. Laura realized she was the one who was betrayed by someone who claimed to love her, and it cost her everything she valued. Story 3. I had been married to my first wife for almost a decade when I joined the local sheriff's office as a deputy. During my time at the academy, I had more time at home due to the class schedule being from 8 to 5 on weekdays. After completing the academy, I returned to shift work at the local jail, working night shifts for 12 hours at a time. About 2 months later, I started feeling uneasy about something not being right. My wife was spending a lot of time with the pastor's wife, sewing and crafting. One night, while off duty and trying to adjust my sleep schedule, I couldn't sleep and went to the restroom. At midnight, I noticed a text on my wife's phone from the pastor saying, "Good night, my love." I was shocked and decided to check for other texts, but they had been deleted. I couldn't understand why she would delete them if it was innocent. I woke her up at 1 a.m. to confront her about it. She dismissed it as a typo and accused me of snooping. She became defensive and kicked me out of our bedroom for a month and a half. I felt like I had messed up and was under so much stress that I lost 35 pounds in a month. I couldn't eat or sleep, and I was a wreck. I suggested counseling, which the pastor recommended, but she refused to engage with the counselor, only quoting Bible verses. She acted self-righteous and refused to address the issues. After a month and a half of this tension, I stumbled upon her diary, which she had been guarding closely along with her phone. I read in her diary about her and the pastor being in love and having to sneak around to be together, even though his wife was aware of their relationship. I confronted her calmly, acknowledging that she was right to hide her diary from me, as I had just read it. She was shocked when I confronted her with the contents of her diary. Suddenly, she became apologetic, saying she never intended for things to escalate this far and never meant to hurt me. She insisted on talking to the pastor immediately. She called him, and I arranged to meet him the next morning at a local fast food restaurant. I discreetly recorded our conversation, which is legal in my area. He admitted to the inappropriate relationship, despite preaching against infidelity and avoiding counseling women alone to avoid any misunderstandings. I let him speak to gather evidence, even though I was furious. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Despite my efforts to salvage our marriage, I suspected the cheating continued. To protect my job and avoid any false domestic violence accusations, I moved out. When people at church asked about my whereabouts, she lied and said I was working. Eventually, the truth came out, leading to the pastor leaving the church he founded 25 years ago and taking up a job in fast food in his mid-50s. It took me years to come to terms with what happened, and it has deeply affected my ability to trust people, especially preachers. I'm sharing this not out of malice, but in the hope that it might help others going through similar experiences. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.